Good day, sir and classmates. My topic is about Chapter 16, Compromise with Colonialism. So, introduction, the successful suppression of the various revolutionary outbreaks or disturbances following the formal end of the Philippine-American War was enough reason for Filipino elite to pursue the alternative of peaceful struggle. The peace prospect began clear when the American colonial authorities repeatedly offered opportunities for Filipino cooperation and participation to the colonial government. So my topic is about Filipino involvement in the pursuit of American colonialism. So after the fall of Manila to Americans, the U.S. President, by the time William McKinley, ordered General Wesley Merritt as the first general to establish military government. The governors exercised wide powers such as executive, legislative, and judicial, which was later completely taken away by 1901. So the duties of the governors were to pacify provinces and to maintain peace order. So basically, the extent and nature of Filipino involvement in the pursuit of American colonialism can be categorized under several readings. First, we have involvement during military phase. B. Increase in Filipino participation. C. Limits to Philippinization. And last, we have social effects of Philippination. So, A. Involvement during military phase, 1899 to 1913. We have Sherman Commission. So, the Sherman Commission was also known as the first Philippine Commission. So, the first significant body created by President McKinley with Jacob Sherman, President of Cornell University. So, Sherman Commission, it is created by former President William McKinley on January 20, 1899, but arrived in Manila by 1899. So, headed by Jacob G. Sherman with four other members, namely George Dewey, Charles H. Denby, Elwell S. Otis, and Dean C. Worcester. So, there was no really difficulty in winning over the elite. So as Sherman readily recognized, judging from the enthusiastic response of those who would later figure prominently in the electoral process as well as in executive appointments. So, sabi sa Sherman Commission, naglalaman ito ng mga rekomendasyon kung paano patatakbuhin ng US ang Pilipinas pagkatapos ng paglipat ng pamamay-ari nito mula sa Espanya papunta sa US sa pamamagitan ng Treaty of Paris. So, ang purpose ng Sherman Commission is to study Philippines and report to US how they should proceed. So, si President McKinley, ginawa itong Sherman Commission with the help of Jacob Sherman para mabantayan yung Pilipinas, para magsulahan, at para makapag-isip sila or makapag-present sila kung ano yung kailangan nila maisagawa or ano yung mga steps na kailangan nilang gawin para makolonyal ng Amerika yung Pilipinas. So, nirekomenda ng komisyon ito na magtatag ng pamahalang sibil na magkaroon ng legislature at pinansyal na independensya sa Estados Unidos at pagtatatag ng sistema sa pampublikong edukasyon. Sabi din kasi ni Sherman, or ayon sa Sherman Commission, hindi pa handa sa pagsasarili ang Pilipinas. So under the military phase, we have Christian Filipinos in the local level. A notable example of this readiness of the Filipino elite to collaborate was the case of Negros Island, which had witnessed as early as 1898 towards Spanish rule the division of inhabitants between the political and economic elite and the peasants and workers. So basically yung dito sa report ko, ang focus ng island is sa Negros Island. So dito yung karamihan sa madi-discuss ko ay patungkol sa Negros Island. So, the landowning class and the Listados and decided upon the entry of United States in the islands to cooperate with the American colonialists. May mga pinili daw ng Filipino elite para makapag-cooperate sa American colonialists. Kapag sinabi natin elite, ito yung mga wealthy mayayaman na tao, ito yung mga maraming properties, and as well as may mga posisyon, matataas na posisyon sa government or sa isang lugar. So the Christian Filipinos in Negros during 1898 with societal positions such as land-owning class and ilustrados. So deciding upon the interest of the U.S. to cooperate with the American colonialists. So ito yung mga nakapag-cooperate sa American colonialists. First, we have supporters of American rule, Juan Araneta, sunod si Jose Luzuriaga, Leandro Locsin. Next is Demetrio Larena, and last we have Agustin Martilla. Sila yung mga nag-cooperate sa provisional government noong November 1898. So, the provisional government was welcomed by under General Elwell Otis in February 1889, welcomed by military government. So, yung provisional government daw, winelcome ni General Elwell Otis in 1899. So the provisional government, as early as 1898, they organized themselves into provisional government to be opposed to the Aguinaldo Revolution government. So hinuhope nila na yung step na to would be able to get American authorities to accept their offer of loyalty to American rule. So sabi dito, yung provisional government daw is kabaligtaran siya ng Aguinaldo Revolutionary Government, and ang purpose nito is maging nila or mag-gain sila ng marami pang tao na makakapag-encourage and motivate sila ng marami pang tao na magkaroon ng loyalty sa American rule. So, on March 1, 1899, gumawa si General James F. Smith ng Military District, Visayan sa Negros. So, sa Negros, meron tayong tinatawag na Negrins Provincial Junta or Junta. So, yung Negrins Provincial Junta, ito yung useful ally in American countermeasures against Malolos government. Nire-represent to ni, first we have Quintin Salas and Zorio Mauricio. So, meron din tayong tinatawag na Papa Isyo, yung mga masa ginawa sa Negros accident. Negros, pinangunahan ni Dionisio Magbuela or kilala na Papa Isyo sa totoong buhay. So, sabi nga kanina, di ba, nagsagawa sila ng provisional government against sa Aguinaldo Revolutionary. So, basically, dito sa Negros Provincial Junta, attempts by Aguinaldo to win the elite field and open conflict between the colonial forces and Balalos government erupted. As noted earlier, the armed disturbances in the Visayas, including Negros, were now definitely led by those who came from below, and the colonial government and the Filipino elite found the suppression of the disturbances not only costly but also difficult. The elite were particularly plagued by the attacks on their properties and lands, but the conflict only drew the elite closer to colonialism. So, mas napalapit daw yung mga elite sa colonialism ng Amerika. So, in 1981, military government was replaced by civil government. So, sabi na kanina, yung military kanina ni General Elwes Otis ay ni-replaced by the civil government. So, the American colonial government would disclose the pacification of islands except in the Muslim South until the abolition in the military under Moro Province in 1913. So, pilano ito ni Chief Justice Cayetano Arellano of the Supreme Court. So, ano nga ba yung nilalaman ng civil government? First, we have the central government. So, the most important manifestation of the American cooperation of the elite was in the national level of administration, being a highly centralized government. Those few occupying the top executive, legislative, and judicial position, exercise vast power and influence national affairs. Sa mga national na posisyon na influenced by the central government. So, national level of administration. Sino-sino ba yung mga Filipino elites appointed as members of the Philippine Commission who are to perform executive and legislative powers and functions? Sino nga ba sila? Sila Gregorio Araneta and Benito Legarda. Sila yung mga examples na magpe-perform ng legislative powers and function in the central government or national level of administration in the Philippine Commission. Next, we have not also have executive legislative powers, we also have judiciary. Ito yung elites were given substantial roles. So it was the judiciary where the Philippine elite was given substantial role in the person of Cayetano, who was appointed Chief of Supreme Court. So may mga Filipino elite daw na may mga binigyan ng role sa pamamagitan ni Chief Justice Cayetano. So, meron tayong katanungan dito. Di ba madalas natin nababanggit yung mga Filipino elite, yung mga mayayaman na tao. Pero, ang tanong, why the elites? So, the question that often recurs is why the Americans easily coopted elite for colonial purposes and why elite had no difficulty shifting loyalty from Filipino to American ways. So, ang tanong dito, bakit kaya yung mga mayayaman na tao, mga chosen people na pinili ng mga American is ang dali nilang ma-motivate o ma-encourage na yung loyalty nila sa Pilipino ay mag-shift sa American colonialism or sa pamamahala ng American. So we have two basic reasons for the elite's readiness to accept colonialism. Meron tayong dalawa kung bakit kaya sila madaling i-shift yung loyalty nila from Filipino to American rule. First, we have the natural fear of losing security of their interest. So, natatakot sila na yung mga kayamanan nila, yung mga mawawala because of American rule. Bakit natatakot yung mga elites or elites sa security ng kanilang interest? It is because the growing demand of the masses for the redistribution of benefits and resources. There was still the reluctance to part with elite privileges in the setup where those of mixed blood had advantaged other natives. It was clear that American colonial interests would be ready to accommodate. So in the total scheme of things, the elite preserves their privileges. In fact, comparatively speaking, the prospects under American rule were much better than under the previous Spanish regime. So mas better daw po yung pamamahala ng American kaysa sa Spanish. Kaya natatakot sila na yung mga kayamanan nila, yung mga ingatan nilang interest ay mawawala. But because of American colonialism. So second, we have the basic orientation of the elite which felt distrust in the integrity and character of the masses. So whom the elite regarded as potential troublemakers, bandits, and enemies of what they represented in the society. Added to this low regard of the integrity of the masses was the contempt of the elite for what appeared as their general lack of knowledge, though intellectual capacity and questionable moral standards. In brief, the elite could not trust their interest and future in the hands of the masses. So, mas meron silang mga trust issues in regards on their interests or properties in the hands of masses. So, mas tiwala sila sa American colonialism. The remarks and opinions of Cayetano Arellano and Trinidad Party de Tabera were examples of condescending attitude toward the Filipino masses, similar to the way the Spanish colonizer looked at the natives. Yeah. So, kaya sobrang dali ng ma-encourage ng American colonialism yung Filipino elite because of these two basic reasons. In the cultural communities, the Americans were also successful in coopting ruling elite at the start of American rule. The tribal communities, American teachers and missionaries opened the path to understanding of American benevolent policy through schools, religious missions, and especially in medical work. So, yung, yung mga American people or Americans, ginamit nila yung mga teachers, mga missionaries para mas madaling masakop ng Americans yung Negros or Philippines. So, ginamit nila yung education, religion, missions, and medical work para mas madaling ipakita ng mga Americans yung purpose nila sa Philippines. Meron silang mga ginamit na mga steps or procedures para mas maengganyo yung mga Pilipino na magpasakop sa Amerika. So, ano-ano ito? So, first, in the Mindanao. So, yung ginawa ng mga Americans in the Mindanao. First, it was part of American strategies to make use of local datos and leaders to promote the needs of social services. So, sabi kanina, may mga schools, may mga medical works or hospital, mga ganyan, sa religion. So, nag-focus yung mga America na magpapabilis yung strategy nila kung um, makipag-coordinate yung mga datos or leaders sa Mindanao para sa mga social services. Ito yung mga includes ng building of schools, was undertaken with the American supervision of native working using existing local materials, yung pag-build ng mga schools. Pangalawa, diba sa school naman yan, sa education. Pangalawa, sa medical workers, sa mga hospital. The same was true of the campaign against unsanitary living condition and diseases, especially those that frequently led to epidemics like cholera, dysentery, smallpox, and malaria. So, parang nagpa-impress yung mga Americans na kung paano nila pamamalaan yung education as well as the hospitals or the medical missions. And last, we have education of children was very much emphasized, especially those of the ruling class. So, yan, yung mga ginawa, yung mga Americans na strategy sa mga under sa Mindanao. So, the critical role of American teacher was underlined by the governor of the Moro province, General John J. Pershing. So, the critical role of the teachers, he said that the school system depends for its success entirely upon the American teachers, and although equipping teachers to excellent work under the proper supervision, educational direction must for sometimes remain in the hands of American teachers. So, sabi niya, ano daw, yung mga American teachers daw, kailangan pa rin, sila pa rin daw yung manguna sa pagtuturo or sila yung mag-direct sa education compared sa Filipino teachers. Sabi niya, kailangan daw nakadepend daw yung success sa American teachers. So, di ba parang ang complicated nung sinabi niya. Dapat daw yung mga American teachers pa rin daw yung manguna instead of Filipino teachers. Yan. So, basically, kung ang kalalagay ng mga teachers is very critical role of American teachers, kailangan may gagamitin na effective instruments kung paano pamamahalaan ng mga Americans yung education policies. Kaya meron tayong tinatawag na Dr. Najib M. Salebi. So, one of the effective instruments of the American educational policies was Dr. Najib M. Shalabi, a medical practitioner turned educator. His background as Christian Arab with education obtained from the American University in Beirut and a medical degree from University Lead Medical School gave him the kind of advantage to deal with the education of the Muslims in the Moro province. So, yung pag-aaral daw ni Salebi ay very effective daw or nagkaroon ng advantage para mas madaling maturuan ng mga Americans yung mga Muslims sa Moro province. So other American teachers who contributed in the reorientation of Mindanao included both military and non-military personnel. Ito yung mga other teachers na may mga significant roles. First, we have Charles R. Cameron. Sila yung succeeded Najib Salebi as a superintendent with the educational programs for Muslims. Si Charles Cameron yun, yung nagtatag na educational programs. Second, we have Private Albert L. Burley of the 2nd Infantry chose to teach thousands of children in Hulu. Thus, we have George Kindy, a teacher with agricultural inclination, introduced farm schools in Bukidnon as models for agricultural education in Mindanao. Yan. So, after ng mga Americans na mag-focus sa Mindanao, they also colonize the Cordillera. So in the Cordilleras, the Americans were confronted by the many problems of the Filipino-American War, which had brought the returning forces of the Filipinos under the Aguinaldo into traditional hostile Ifugao country. The outside forces that Ifugao had hunting activities were constant problems, but the pressure was not as difficult as Spanish as Aguinaldo forces. So, kung sa Mindanao, napadali yung pagko-colonize ng mga Americans, but because of education, and because of medical works and missions, sa Cordillera naman, medyo nahirapan yung mga Americans. Meron sila, nakakonfront sila ng mga 200 Filipino people na under ng Aguinaldo, sa pamahalaan ni Aguinaldo, in traditional hostile Ifugao country. So, medyo nahirapan sila kasi loyal ng mga to sa dating pamamahala. So, basically, yung ginawa nila, medyo nahirapan sila. Kaya yung ginawa nila, nag-isip sila ng mga ways kung paano yung mga Pilipino ma-encourage nila o ma-motivate nila sa ibang paraan, hindi lang about sa education, missions, and medical, medical na pamamaraan. So, ginawa nila, Americans impressed the Ifugao first by the demonstration of Filipino power. Pangalawa, practice of avoiding outright confiscation of food. Pangatlo, payment of Ifugao food items. Yung mga Americans, sila yung nagbabayad ng mga they also paid prices for the chickens, pigs, and food items made available by the Ifugaos who had not anticipated such attitude, having experienced the opposite from Spanish and Filipino forces earlier. So, yung mga hindi kaya magbayad. So, and last, we have assistance in rendering speedy justice. So, may mga gusto ipaglaban, dinatulong ng mga Americans para mas mapabilis ang proseso. So, then, yung nangyari, in the conflict between two Ifugaos, Sabangan and Hapaw, American guards made the difference. So, consequently, humiwat, the leader of an Ifugao band that beheaded an American soldier, surrendered and offered his cooperation in the American effort to establish a presence in the Cordillera. So, yung leader ng Ifugao daw sa Cordillera, na si Himawat, nag-surrender na siya and nag-offer na siya ng, sige, pwede nyo ng pamahalaanan yung Cordillera. Pwede na sila mag-establish kung ano yung mga American rules and so forth sa lugar ng Mindanao or ng Cordillera. And by 1903, by the 1902 muna, preparation for the American colonial government and the study of the area through Dr. David P. Burroughs, who became the head of Bureau of Non-Christian Tribes. So, yung Cordillera daw, nagpe-prepare na yung colonial government, American colonial government kung paano pamamahalaan yung Cordillera by means of Dr. David P. Burroughs. And so, by 1903, Secretary of the Interior Worcester had gotten Dominga at Tandada of Dulayan and Rafael Baluyunoan to accept American rule. So, noong 1983, meron tayong 92 chiefs and headmen of Ifugao country organized a conference for a government in Ifugao area. So yan, nagkaroon na sila ng mga pag-uusap or mga meetings or mga conference o paano mas um, ano yung gusto mangyari ng American colonial government sa Ifugao area or Cordillera. So the pacification efforts of Americans found very encouraging prospects in pioneering activities of former military men like Samuel Kane and Al Hora, whose business explorations and ventures provided later American officers and official insights into uh, Ifugao character and psychology. So, sila yung mga former military men who helped in the pacification of the area and the preparation of the people for American government. And si Samuel Kane and Horan. Yan. So, we also have Capt. Levis Pastone and Lieutenant Levy Case. Sila yung mga tumulong. So, Army forces like Captain Lewis Patstone, ito yung ginawa niya, in Nueva Vizcaya and Lieutenant Levy Case in Ifugao country, contributed a lot in preparing Ifugaos for the eventual establishment of American political structures in the area, integrating not only Ifugaos but also other Igorotos into constabulary as soldiers in the local government as presidents or mayors or kabakilyas. So, yun yung ginawa ni Captain Lewis and Lieutenant Levy Case. So, because of the efforts ng mga Americans on Cordillera, so by 1986, the entry of Lieutenant Jeff D. Galman into Ifugao country saw the beginning of an era of peace among Ifugaos, and American rules set the pace and the patterns for the rest of Cordillera. So, because of the efforts of Americans para masakop yung Cordillera, nakita ni Lieutenant Jeff D. Galman na yung Ifugao and yung American nagkaroon na ng pagkakaisa. Meron na silang mga sets of governments, colonial governments, in the rest of Cordilleras. So next we have treaty traps. First we have in the Mindanao, second in the Cordillera, and the third we have treaty traps. So in the southern Philippines, Muslim leadership was already divided into those who opposed and those who accepted American presence in 1899. In 1899 pala. So, but the latter group, which was represented by those in Sulu, allowed the American presence without necessarily accepting American sovereignty. So, nahati daw yung Muslim leaderships sa dalawa. Pangalawa, opposing and accepting. Kasi sinabi natin opposing, ito yung hindi sang-ayon, and yung accepting is sang-ayon. So, kapag sinabi natin sang-ayon, ito yung Beds Treaty, signed by Sultan Jamalul Kiram. Yan, yung first picture, and the second, General John C. Bates. So, basically, makikita natin yung pagkakaiba nila. Ito, yung kaliwa galing sa Pilipinas, yung sa kanan naman galing sa Amerika. Clearly expressed the source of political compromise. Yung parang, papasakop yung mga sultan, yung sa pangunguna ni Sultan Jamalul Kiram, when it comes to political. So, Bates Treaty. Tinatawag siyang Bates Treaty. So, yung Bates Treaty, guaranteed peace between the Americans and Muslims in Sulu. But it should be noted that from the perspective of the Sulu leadership, their relations with the new colonial government was one of the political coexistence characterized by mutual respect for personal property and other rights. So, sabi dito sa Bates Treaty, yung Bates Treaty daw, nagagaranti siya or sinisecure niya na magkakaroon ng peace between sa Americans and Muslims sa Sulu. Pero ang sabi ng mga taga-Sulu, yung mga Sulu leadership, the Sulu signatories to the treaty revealed the extent to which local Sulu leadership was involved in the American Peace Initiative, with Dato Calvi and Dato Jola Kalin signing the document. So this was a significant accomplishment of American diplomacy because it represented, as the close of 19th century, the only meaningful opposition soulmate which political center was in Maubong, Lowish trading point in the southern part of Hilo. So in the same manner, Patikul was the center of activities in the northern part. Yan. So, mm, so under the treaty, the local leaders agreed to allow the Americans to freedom to trade and engage in commerce as well as the right to fly their own flag. So may mga pinagkasunduan sila yung ano ng Muslims and Americans kung ano yung mga dapat at hindi dapat gawin sa sa lugar ng Sulu. So, yung kailangan, ang pwedeng gawin ng mga Americans is pwede sila makipag-trade and engage sa commerce as well as the right to fly their own flag. Pero, yung mga Americans agreed not to enter in the internal affairs of the people and in case of dispute and conflict to act in consultation with the local leaders, especially in Sultan. So these were general understanding the agreement guaranteed by the treaty as perceived by the local signatories. So yung pangalawa naman na pagkasunduan nila is they should not respect for personal property or and other rights. Yeah. So yung kailangan yung Americans daw kailangan i-respect daw yung mga personal property and rights ng mga nasa sulat. So yung grades treaty, nahati siya sa dalawang version. We have Tausug version and English version. Siyempre yung dalawang pumirma, yung basic na congressman or nanguna sa grades treaty, siyempre we have the Sultan and American. So yung Sultan, siyempre, ang lingwahe nila is Tausug. Kaya meron tayo tinatawag na Tausug version. And para naman sa English version, ito yung para sa mga Americans. So, sa Tausug version, we have political coexistence. Sa English version naman, ito yung establishment of American rule in Sulu. So, acceptance of American sovereignty. Parang agreement na ina-accept ng mga taga-Sulu na yung American is mamamahala na sa kanila lugar. So, unilateral abrogation, colonial government by General William Overtoft and Moro Province Governor Leonard Wood. So, on March 1984, the reaction of Sultan Enda to surprise and irritation, dishonor, and shame on Sulu leadership. So, because na yung mga Sultan and Datos daw, nagulat sila sa dishonor and shame to Sulu leadership. So, partial exercise of sovereignty by Spain. Yan. Yung mga Datos daw and Sultan, nagulat sila na nagpasakop daw yung mga Sulu leadership under the American rules. So, next we have the Carpenter-Kiram Agreement 1915. The effect of persisting American belief in the Sultan's involvement led to further emasculation of the Sultanate through the Kiram-Carpenter Agreement. On March 22, 1915, the agreement devised the Sultan of his political power and prerogative. He was only allowed to exercise the rights and duties as spiritual leader. So, sabi ko nga kanina, yung mga Sultan, nagulat sila kasi mga Sultan sa Sulu, nagulat sila kasi nagpa-under yung mga ibang leaders under the American rule, American policies. So, kaya gumawa ng Carpenter-Kiram Agreement. So, under the Carpenter-Kiram Agreement, yung mga Sultan daw, tinutulig sila as spiritual leader. Since under Islam, there is no separation of power, the agreement created problems for the Sultan. Yan. So, yung agreement to, nagkaroon ng problems sa Sultan. It will be difficult to truly exercise spiritual influence without political authority of the Sultan previously enjoyed. Hence, the Sultanate itself was seriously affected by the emasculation of the powers of the Sultan, which recovery would subsequently prove extremely difficult. So sabi dyan, yung mga sultan ba, nahihirapan sila na mag-serve as spiritual leaders nang hindi sineseparate yung political na beliefs nila. So, nagkaroon daw ng malaki adjustments, problems, difficulties when it comes sa agreement sa corporate plan. So, ito yung mga notes sa agreements sa KREM. Independence, sovereignty, partial exercise of sovereignty by Spain, partial but de facto temporal sovereignty of U.S. means in Article 9. So, stipulations, total sovereignty of U.S. over all the Sultanate except in manners and religions. So, yan, yung mga agreement daw, yung hindi na sila mapapasakop sa Spain, yung mga temporal sovereignty, ganyan. Tapos, kailangan yung stipulations is total sovereignty na daw ng US over all the Sultanate. So, US na daw dapat yung sumatotal na mamamahala sa mga Sultanate except in the mothers in the region. So, ang ganda pa rin naman kasi nire-respeto pa rin ng mga US militaries yung religion sa Pilipinas. So, yan. Tapos na tayo sa involvement during the military phase. Next na tayo sa increase in Filipino participation. So, yan. In 1912, the political climate in the United States had changed. Not only was a new president coming in, Woodrow Wilson, but a new political orientation was expected to emerge from the change to democratic rule. So, nagkaroon daw ng political change in the United States. Since the turn of the century, the Republican leadership had kept the conservative tradition of American policies unaltered, particularly in relation to colonial expansion. The Republican administration had been associated with the acquisition of overseas colonies and the maintenance of those colonies for the business economic interests of American society. Yeah. So in essence, the establishment of the American colonies into the Philippines was part of expansionist inertia that came from the vigorous westward expansion of American colonies to the vast frontiers of Indian terrorists looking for new opportunities and lands under specific coast of California was reached. So ano nga po ba yung expansionist inertia? Inertia of westward movement was there. It only needed the mitigation of other pressures that had transformed America from a rural to urban technological societies. So, ito din po yung inertia na sinasabi. The need of raw materials and markets, added an economic dimension to American territorial expansion, just as the influence of Great Commission, and Great Commission brought by religious vision of the fundamentalists of America to see the gospel message preached to the religious beyond. All these political, economic, and social cultural motivations were ideas of Republican Party had sought to uphold. Second, we have the effects on colony. So, the Democratic Party administration, which differed to some extent from the Republican, was expected to bring some changes in American expansionist policy and direction. So, sa effects on colony, so lagi natin tatandaan yung word, the Democratic Party administration, police interest, modification, and control colonies. So, the Republican defeat, 1912, from Francis Fulton Harrison, first Democratic General Governor in 1913. Yan, siya yun. Siya yun ang patag ng presidential election. First Democratic Governor General of the Philippines in 1913. So, basically nagaling siya sa America. So, under the Harrison Rule, rapid Felinization in the legislative branch. So, under din dito yung Jones Law. Passed in 1916, the legislative power in the islands was given to the Filipinos. So, all the members of the legislature were elected except for two senators from the Christian sector who were appointed by the Governor General. So, yung Jones Law, galing siya kay Cayetano Arellano Biking na naging Chief Justice. So, siya ay may akda ng Filipino Autonomy Act 19, lalo na sa kilala sa tawag na Batas Jones or Joan Law. So, ang Batas Jones o Philippine Autonomy Act ay ang batas na nagbibigay sa mga Pilipino na kalayaan na magsarili at pangako ng pagkakaloob sa kasarinlan. So, yung Batas Jones or Jones Law, ito yung unang hakbang tungo sa pagsasarili ng Pilipinas. So, yan, binibigyan ng karapatan ng mga Pilipino when it comes sa provision at budget at kapangyarihan na pamahalaan ang taripa at kawanihan. Ayan. So, yung sa Jones Law, meron tayong tinatawag na lower courts na merong Americans and Filipino judges. So, by means of this Jones Law, mas nadadagdagan daw yung participation ng mga Pilipino, mas nadadagdagan daw yung number. So, yan, tapos na tayo. Next is limits to Filipinization, restraints of elitism. Yan. So, while Filipinization gained momentum under the Harrison administration, there was a fundamental limitation to extend to its joinment in the Filipino society. So, sabi nga kanina, yung mga Harrison administration, yung mga Jones Law, yan ang nagbibigay ng hakbang tungo sa pagsasarili sa Pilipinas. Meron namang mga limits na kung ano yung mga kailangan lang gawin or mga di dapat gawin ng mga Pilipino elite sa Filipino society. Baka kasi masyado na nila na-enjoy yung Filipino society. So, under the law, those who could run for office must be able to read and write. So, sa office daw, kailangan pag magpapatakbo daw ng office, kailangan magaling ka magsulat at magbasa. They must be property owners or have been government employees during the Spanish period. In the effect, the election law already limited participation to the elite. So, di ba yung kailangan daw yung mga nasa office daw, kailangan marunong basa, kailangan marunong din magsulat, so yung mga properties, tapos kailangan government employees under the Spanish period. So, di ba yung mga taong ito lang yung mga mayayaman na tao kasi mga properties sila, kaya hindi sila tinawag Philippine elite kasi diba, wealth people sila. So, yung mga election law, nag-limited lang tuloy siya sa mga elite, sa mga mayayaman na tao lang. Next, sa economic limitation naman, the dilemma of Filipino leadership at the best seen in the economic relations with the United States during the Harrison year, 1913 to 1920. So before this period, the economic policy of the United States was anchored entirely on the ambiguous of Paris Treaty of 1898 and later on the Free Trade Commission in a Penat-Aldrich-Ta Fifth Act of 1909. So, yan. So, under the Payne-Aldrich Tariff Act of 1909, so the Filipino interest is not equals to Filipino interest. So, it also strengthened the Filipinos' American economic interest. Yan. Tapos na tayo sa limits of Filipinization. Last, we have social effect of limitations. Kung may mga limits tayo na limits sa mga Filipino elite or Filipino, kung ano yung mga dapat nila hindi dapat gawin, alamin naman natin kung ano yung epekto sa social. First, we have tradition and versus modernism. The establishment of American liberal democracy as the new pattern of Filipino way of life would be the confirmation between Filipino traditional ways and the new system. The basic differences in values would eventually create the discotomy of system in which a democratic form and traditional essence were ordered to create democracy Filipino style. So, di ba sa pagkakaiba nga daw ng mga ways ng Filipino traditionals, doon naging epekto na kailangan magkaroon ng democracy Filipino style ang mga ang Pilipinas. Ano nga ba ang democracy Filipino style? But before the end of Harrison's term, the American colonial administration would only notice only the form of democracy was in evidence. The essence of democracy was not yet to be developed. The Filipino values rooted in ancient traditions continued to manifest the influence in the actual operation of new democracy. Harrison's term was the best because it was a demonstration of what trust could do to Filipino-American relations. Filipino look back to the time as the emergency of a dynamic Filipino leaderships trying to create its own democratic form. So last, the social effects of colonization, mas nagkaroon ng kalayaan yung mga Pilipino kung paano pamamalaan. Kapag sila ng democracy, Filipino style, kapag sinabi natin democracy, iyon tungkol sa system of government by the whole population of the eligible members of the state, typically through elected representatives. So, mas nagkaroon ng kalayaan, kung sinabi ng democratic, kalayaan. Dynamic cultural process, propagation of American property. So, under the democracy Filipino styles, it is about the Filipino leadership trying to create its own democratic form. But by creating its democratic Filipino style, it said that unpreparedness of the Filipinos for independence. So yung mga Pilipino daw, incompetent pa daw sila when it comes to bureaucracy and graft and corruption. So thus, toward the end of the Harrison era, changes Filipino incompetence in the bureaucracy, graft, and corruption, and the unpreparedness of the Filipino for independence, in general, became the common basis of criticism against administration of Governor Francis Burton Harrison. So, na-question tuloy yung pamamahala or administration ni Harrison. But to the Filipinos, Harrison's term was the best because it was a demonstration of what trust could do to Filipino-American relations. Filipino look back to the time as emergency of the Filipino leadership trying to create its own democratic form. So sabi ko nga kanina, yung sabi daw, criticize daw yung mga Filipino sa paggawa ng democratic. Kino-question din yun sa mahala ni Harrison. But because of the Filipino trust the Harrison terms, they said that it was the best because it was a demonstration of what trust could do to do Filipino and American relation. Mas naging strong or mas nagkaroon ng strong relationship between Filipino and American people, and mas magkaroon ng kalayaan yung mga Pilipino na magkaroon ng democratic style kahit na napapamahalaan sila ng American way. So, thank you for listening. Sir Daco and classmates, again, my name is Queen Esther Punzalan, and my topic is about Chapter 16, Compromise with Colonialism. I hope you learned about my topic for today. Thank you for listening. Goodbye.